3 days after my wife told me I was the unfaithful one, a lab report with her name on it proved she had been lying to my face for months, and the wild part is that I was the one who walked out clean. Then she tried to turn the whole town against me, and I decided I would not just leave. I would leave with the truth in my hands. I used to think betrayal was loud, like a door slam, like someone yelling, like the kind of drama neighbors pretend they do not hear. But the real kind is quiet. It arrives dressed as normal. It sits at your kitchen table. It laughs at your jokes. And it still finds a way to make you feel like you are the one doing something wrong. My wife Dana and I had been married for 8 years. We had a small house with a porch swing we never used, 2 cars that always needed something, and a calendar on the fridge that made our life look organized even when it was not. I worked in logistics, the kind of job where you fix problems before anyone notices, and Dana worked in marketing, the kind of job where she convinced people the problem was actually a feature. We were not perfect, but we had routines, Sunday coffee runs, weeknight takeout, the same dumb show at the same dumb time, and I honestly believed that counted for something. Then Dana started changing her phone habits like it was a new religion. Screen down, face tight, quick little smiles at messages she would not share. And when I asked what was funny, she would say, "Just work stuff." And if I stayed curious, she would add, "You would not get it." Which is a sentence that can turn a living room cold in 1 second. At first, I blamed stress. Dana had big accounts, deadlines, all that. So I tried to be the supportive husband. I cooked more. I handled the laundry. I even learned what oat milk actually was, which is not a sacrifice I take lightly. Still, the distance kept growing. She stopped telling me about her day. She started taking calls in the garage. And she began going out with coworkers more often, always last minute, always dressed like she was going to be photographed. I told myself I was being insecure, because nobody wants to be that guy. The guy who reads meaning into everything and turns love into a police report. Then came the Tuesday that cracked everything open. Dana came home earlier than usual, and I knew something was off because she did not announce herself. No keys tossed, no shoes kicked, just quiet movement, like she hoped the house would not notice her. I found her in the bathroom staring at her own reflection, with the kind of face you make when you realize you left the stove on. Her eyes were red, but not from crying, more like from not blinking for a long time. She jumped when I spoke, and I asked, "Are you okay?" And she said, "Yeah, just tired." But her voice sounded like it was borrowed. I tried again, "Dana, what is going on?" And she snapped, "Nothing. Can you not do this right now?" I backed off, because I did not want to fight, because I still believed we were a team, even when she clearly did not. That night she barely ate, she pushed noodles around her plate and stared at her phone like it was about to deliver a verdict. I asked if something happened at work. She said no. I asked if she needed anything. She said no. And then she went to bed early, leaving me on the couch with the TV talking to itself. The next morning I found an appointment card on the counter, a clinic name, a date, and a time. No reason written, no note. Just the card like it had fallen out of her pocket, and decided to confess. My stomach did that slow, sinking thing, the one where your brain starts listing possibilities you do not want. I took a picture of the card and put it back exactly where it was, because I did not want to be the guy snooping, even while I was literally being the guy snooping. Later that day, Dana called me from work, her voice overly sweet. Like a customer service rep trying to keep a refund from happening, she said, "Hey, can we talk tonight?" And I said sure. And she paused too long before saying, "It is important." That pause told me everything and nothing at the same time. When she got home, she did not take off her coat. She stood by the kitchen island like she was waiting for someone to hand her a script. She said, "I went to the doctor," and I said, "Okay." And she said, "I have an infection." And the word infection landed in my chest like a weight. I asked what kind, and she swallowed hard. And then she said 3 letters I had not heard since health class. And she said them like she could drop them on the floor and step over them. My ears rang, my hands went cold, and my first thought was not anger. It was math. The simple timeline math of how long we had been married and how faithful I had been, and how this did not make sense unless something else was true. I asked the question that felt like swallowing glass. Dana, how? And she lifted her chin and said, I do not know. Maybe you brought it home. That was the moment I realized she was not scared. She was strategic. I stared at her and waited for her to correct herself, for her to say sorry, for her to say I made a mistake, for her to say anything human. Instead, she crossed her arms and said, You have been distant lately. You have been on your phone. You have been working late. And I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so bold it was almost performance art. I said, I am getting tested. And she said, good, because I am not taking the blame for this. And she said blame like she had already assigned it to me in her head. The next 48 hours were a blur of waiting rooms, forms, and that weird, sterile smell that makes every sound feel too loud. I answered questions. I signed papers. I kept my voice calm, because if I lost my composure, I knew I would not get it back. When the results came in, the nurse told me I was clear. And I thanked her like she had just handed me a winning lottery ticket. I sat in my car after and stared at the steering wheel, because relief and heartbreak can exist in the same breath. That evening, I came home with the paper in an envelope, and Dana saw it and her eyes narrowed like she was already hunting for loopholes. I told her I was fine, and the smallest flicker of panic crossed her face, because my clean result meant her story had nowhere to stand. She recovered fast. She always did. And she said, tests can be wrong. And I said, then we can test again. And she said, you are making this about you. And that is when I realized the next phase was going to be her favorite sport. Blame shifting. I did not yell. I did not call her names. I just said, we are done. And the air in the kitchen changed. Dana stared at me like I had taken something from her. And she said, you cannot do that. And I said, I'm doing it. And she laughed once, sharp and short, and said, so you are leaving because you got caught? And I said, no, I am leaving because I found the truth. And she leaned in and whispered, what truth? You do not have anything. She was wrong. I did not have it yet, but I knew exactly where to start looking. And as she walked past me to the bedroom, already typing on her phone, I understood something chilling. Dana was not just going to fight the divorce. She was going to rewrite reality, and she was going to make me the villain in her version of the story. So I opened my laptop, and I began building a timeline. Because if she wanted a war of stories, I was going to bring receipts, and I was going to do it calmly, carefully, and legally. And that night, the first message popped up on her tablet that she forgot was linked to our home Wi-Fi, and I read a name I had never seen before, and my stomach dropped all over again, because the truth had a face now, and it was closer than I expected. I did not slam doors or throw anything. I did the opposite. I got quiet. Because quiet is where details start talking. Dana went into the bedroom with her phone held like a shield, and I stayed at the kitchen table staring at my laptop like it could blink first. The tablet on the counter lit up again. Another message preview. A first name. A little joke that sounded too familiar. Like two people who had been sharing secrets for a while. I did not touch the tablet right away. I just watched it. Because I needed to know if I was about to learn the truth, or just a cruel piece of it. When Dana showered, I picked it up and opened the synced messages. My hands were steady in a way that surprised me, because my heart was doing laps. The conversation was not explicit. It did not need to be. It was the kind of flirty shorthand people use when they think nobody will ever read it. Inside jokes, a nickname, plans that sounded like work but were not. Little references to a hotel lobby bar, a late meeting, a dress she wore for someone else, and then a line that made my throat tighten. He wrote, "You should get that checked." And she replied, "I am handling it. Do not stress." So there it was. Not a confession, not a signed affidavit, but the outline of the truth. The name was Malik, and the profile photo was a man in a blazer standing in front of a step and repeat banner, one of those corporate event walls. I zoomed in and caught the logo of a local real estate firm, which felt almost comical, because of course it was real estate. The whole profession is selling people on a story. I took screenshots of the message thread, every page, every date, every timestamp. I emailed them to myself. Then I created a folder on a drive Dana did not know existed, because I had learned something that night. Trust is nice. Backups are nicer. I did not confront her immediately. I know that sounds strange, but when someone has already decided you are the villain, confronting them too early is just handing them a draft of your next accusation. I needed more than a gut feeling and a few messages. I needed a pattern. The next day, I did something I had never done in my adult life. I called in sick. Not because I was sick, but because I needed time to become the kind of person who can survive a lie like this without letting it turn them into a mess. I sat at a coffee shop with my laptop and started a timeline. Dana started going out more often in late spring. Her phone habits changed in early summer. She suddenly had a new password. She began taking more weekend work trips, and she started buying expensive perfume she claimed was a free sample. I cross-checked those dates with our bank statements, because money is honest even when people are not. There were charges that looked normal at first. Dinners, ride shares, parking. But then I saw repeats. The same restaurant on nights she said she was meeting a client across town. The same hotel chain on weekends she claimed she was staying with her friend Lacey. And the ride shares that picked her up from places that were not near any client office. I printed everything. Not because paper is magical, but because paper has a way of looking serious even before a judge sees it. At home, I kept my face neutral. I made dinner like usual. I asked Dana about her day like usual, and she played her part like usual. She said, "You seem calm for someone who just accused me of cheating." And I said, "I did not accuse you. I said we are getting divorced." She smirked and said, "Because you feel guilty," and I watched her try to build a cage out of my silence. 2 days later, Dana escalated. She did not just defend herself, she attacked. She told my sister that I had been acting shady. She told our mutual friends that I was the one who brought home problems. She told her mother that I was trying to abandon her when she was sick, and that last one was clever, because it made her sound fragile, and me sound cruel. My phone started buzzing with messages that were not questions. They were verdicts. People asking what I did, people telling me to man up, people saying marriage is hard, as if this was about forgetting an anniversary. I answered nobody. I took screenshots of that too, because public opinion is a weapon, and she was loading it fast. Then I got the first direct accusation from Dana herself. She leaned against the counter and said, "If you tell anyone I cheated, I will tell everyone you did, and I will make it stick." She said it like she had rehearsed it in the mirror. I nodded and said, "Okay." And she looked confused, because she expected anger, and anger is easy to paint as guilt. That night I called a lawyer. Not a flashy one. A quiet one with a calm voice and a reputation for being allergic to nonsense. Her name was Marlene, and within 10 minutes she said, "Do not move out yet. Do not argue in text. Document everything, and do not warn her about what you have." I told her I had screenshots and statements, and she said, "Good. Now we do this clean." Clean became my new favorite word. Clean records, clean communication, clean boundaries. Because Dana was throwing mud and I was not going to roll around with her to prove I was not dirty. The next twist came on a Thursday when Dana announced she had a work conference out of town. She said it casually while scrolling, not even looking at me. I said, "Have fun." And she paused, because my calm was starting to scare her. The second she left the driveway, I opened our shared location history, not to track her like a spy, but to confirm what she had already forced me to doubt. She did not go out of town. She went across town, to a hotel I had circled on my printed statement. And then my phone buzzed. A notification from a home security app we barely used, motion detected at the front door. I opened the camera feed and saw Dana walking back in, not alone, and my pulse jumped. Because I realized she was not just lying anymore. She was getting careless. And careless is where the truth finally stops hiding. I watched the camera feed like it was a documentary about someone else. Dana opened the door wide enough for Malik to slip inside, and she looked over her shoulder before closing it. Not scared, not surprised. More like a person checking whether the audience was seated. They did not rush. They acted like the house belonged to them both. And that was the part that stung, not some dramatic moment. Just the casual confidence of two people who had practiced being careless. I did not drive home. I did not call and scream. I sat in my parked car 2 streets away and let the system do what it was built to do. Record, timestamp, store. My hands were steady again, like my body had decided panic was a waste of fuel. I saved the clip, then saved it again, then sent it to my lawyer with a short message. They are in my house right now, and I added the time. A few minutes later, the camera caught them moving through the living room. Malik pointed at my bookshelf like he was touring a rental. Dana laughed, and then she said something that flipped my stomach. She said, "Just keep it simple. If he pushes this in court, I will say he was the one stepping out, and you back me up." She said it like a business plan, like a pitch deck. Malik nodded and said, "He looks like the type who will fold if everyone thinks he is guilty." So that was the real play. Not just denying, not just blaming, but recruiting, building a second voice to repeat her version until it sounded true. I replayed that part twice to make sure I heard it right. Then I clipped that segment and labeled it, "Plan to accuse me," because if Dana wanted to paint me as the problem, she had just handed me the paint can with her fingerprints on it. When they finally left, Dana walked him out like nothing happened. She even fixed her hair in the reflection of the window. Malik stepped onto the porch and said something I could not hear. Then he smiled. The kind of smile people wear when they think the story is already written. Dana waved, closed the door, and the house went still. I waited until she drove away again. Then I went home, not to confront her, but to protect myself. I did a slow walk through the rooms like an inspector. I took photos of anything out of place, a glass on the counter that was not mine, a coaster moved, a chair angled differently. Little things that sound ridiculous until you are in a courtroom and someone says, "You are making it up." Then I checked the office drawer where we kept paperwork, and I found a folded envelope tucked behind warranty manuals. Inside was a handwritten note with a phone number and a hotel name. No romance, no poetry, just logistics, which somehow made it worse. I photographed it and put it back exactly where it was, because I was done with emotional reactions. I was collecting facts. That evening, Dana came home and acted almost cheerful. She asked if I wanted takeout. She asked if I had a good day. She even touched my shoulder in a way that felt staged, and I realized she was trying to reset the board. She said, "I have been thinking, maybe we should do counseling." And I almost admired the timing, because she wanted counseling the second she felt her control slipping. I said, "You can do whatever helps you, but I am still filing." Her smile tightened, and she said, "You know people are asking questions." And I said, "Let them ask." She leaned closer and lowered her voice, and she said, "If you keep pushing, I will tell everyone you put me at risk, that you ruined my health, that you humiliated me." She said it with that same confident tone. Like I was supposed to shrink, I did not shrink. I said, "Dana, I have been tested. I am fine, and I am documenting everything." Her eyes flicked to the tablet on the counter for half a second, and in that half a second, I knew she suspected the messages were not as private as she thought. She tried another angle, softer this time. She said, "Why are you doing this to me?" And I said, "I am not doing it to you. I am responding to what you did." Then she went cold again and said, "You have no proof." And I said, "Okay." After she went to bed, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, just one line, "Stop digging or you will regret it." No name, no signature, just a threat that tried to sound powerful. I stared at it and laughed once, quiet and bitter, because it was almost cute. Like someone watched too many movies and thought intimidation was a substitute for truth. I forwarded the message to Marlene. Then I opened a new note on my laptop and typed a title, "Escalation." Because the game had changed, and Dana was no longer just lying. She was trying to scare me into silence. And I was not the kind of man who stayed quiet when someone tried to rewrite my life. Marlene called me the next morning, and her voice was calm in that way professionals get when they have seen this movie before. She said, "Do not respond to the unknown number. Save it, screenshot it, and from now on assume every message is evidence." Then she said something that landed hard. She said, "Dana is building a narrative. Your job is to build a record." So I did. I turned my life into a filing system. I stopped talking in circles and started talking in sentences that could be read aloud in court. I kept everything in writing. I used short replies. I avoided late-night arguments. I stayed polite enough that nobody could call me unstable, and I let Dana get louder. Because loud people make mistakes. Dana made her first big mistake at my cousin Rachel's birthday dinner. She came even though we were barely speaking. She walked in with that practiced smile and the room went awkward. Then she raised her glass and said a little speech about loyalty and honesty, and I knew she was aiming at me without saying my name. People laughed in that nervous way, and then Dana turned and said, "I just hope nobody here is living a double life, because it destroys families." Her eyes locked on mine, and I felt the room lean in. I smiled and said, "You are right. It does destroy families," and I let the silence sit there. Dana expected me to defend myself, to argue, to look guilty, but I just ate my cake and said nothing else. Later, my aunt pulled me aside and whispered what is going on, and I said calmly, "We are divorcing, and I will not discuss details." That drove Dana crazy, because she needed my reaction more than she needed the truth. 2 days later, she filed first, not just divorce, but a list of claims, emotional abandonment, suspicious behavior, and a vague accusation that I had exposed her to health risks. She even asked for temporary exclusive use of the house, like I was the one who should pack a bag. Marlene read it and said, "This is aggressive, but it is also sloppy." She pointed at inconsistencies, dates that did not match, statements that could be disproved. She said, "She is counting on you panicking, do not." Then we got lucky in the most unromantic way possible. Dana forgot that our car insurance app tracked mileage and trip history for discounts. She had installed it herself and bragged about saving money. The app showed her car going to the same hotel on multiple nights when she claimed she was at late client dinners across town. And one night, it showed her car parked at Malik's office building after hours. Marlene said, "This is not a smoking gun, but it supports the pattern. Pattern matters." The next week, I received a message from Lacey, the friend Dana kept mentioning. Lacey wrote, "Hey, I do not know what Dana is telling people, but I need you to know she has not been staying with me. I have been worried for a while. I did not want to get involved, but she is blaming you, and it is not fair." My chest tightened, not because I felt saved, but because it confirmed how far Dana had gone. She was using other people as props. I asked Lacey if she would be willing to write a short statement. Lacey said yes, and she sounded exhausted, like she had been holding her breath for months. That night, Dana cornered me in the kitchen and said, "Stop talking to my friends." And I said, "Your friends are adults. They can talk to whoever they want." She snapped, "You are manipulating everyone." And I said, "I am not manipulating anyone. I am just not lying." Her face twisted, and she said, "Fine. If you want war, I will give you war." And then she did something I did not expect. She picked up her phone and called someone on speaker, and she said, "Malik, tell him what you told me. Tell him you saw him with that woman." There was a pause. Then a male voice said, "Dana, what are you doing?" And she hissed, "Just say it. Say you saw him." Malik sounded irritated and said, "I am not doing this." And the line went dead. Dana froze because in that moment her backup witness refused to be her puppet, and she looked at me like she wanted to blame me for that too. I just nodded slowly and said, "Thank you for that." And she said, "What?" And I said, "You just showed me exactly how desperate you are." She stormed off, and I sat down at the table and wrote another entry in my record, attempted fabrication with named third party, because the case was no longer just about divorce. It was about who the court would believe, and Dana was starting to build her story out of thin air, while I was stacking mine brick by brick. The court date got scheduled, and Dana treated it like a stage. She arrived with a sad face and a rehearsed story. I arrived with a folder and a calm voice. Marlene submitted the screenshots, the security clips with timestamps, the bank and trip records, and Lacey's statement that Dana was never there. Dana tried to pivot and say I was controlling. Marlene asked simple questions. Why did you tell people you stayed with Lacey? Why did your car go to the hotel on those dates? Why did you call Malik to invent a sighting? Dana answered with emotion, not facts. And the judge kept asking for details she did not have. Malik did not show up, and that silence spoke louder than any speech. When the hearing ended, Dana looked shocked, like she expected the truth to bend for her. And for the first time, I saw fear. Not of losing me, but of losing the story she sold everyone. The next hearing focused on property, and Dana tried a new tactic. She claimed she sacrificed her career for mine, even though our tax returns showed steady income from both of us. Marlene walked the judge through the financial trail, the separate spending tied to the hotel, the sudden cash withdrawals, and the way Dana filed first with claims that did not match her own records. The judge was not dramatic, just thorough, and thorough is deadly to a lie. Dana's attorney argued for a 50-50 split. Marlene argued that Dana's misconduct and bad faith filings mattered, and that I had maintained the home and paid the larger share of long-term costs. The ruling came back with me awarded most of the marital property, and Dana ordered to cover part of my legal fees. Dana stared at me like I had stolen something, but I had not stolen anything. I had simply stopped letting her take reality. After court, Dana tried one last time to corner me in the parking lot. She said, "You ruined my life. You turned everyone against me. You were supposed to protect me." I looked at her and felt something I did not expect. Not hatred, just clarity, I said. "You ruined your life the moment you decided a lie was easier than accountability. I did not turn people against you. I stopped covering for you." She started to cry, and then tried to switch it into anger, but the performance had no audience left. I got in my car and drove home to a house that finally felt quiet in a healthy way. In the weeks after, I changed passwords, changed routines, and rebuilt small things like Sunday coffee runs, only this time alone and oddly peaceful. The moral victory was not the property. It was the proof. I walked out without shame, without panic, and without carrying her story on my back. And that is how I knew I would be fine.